Top NHL draft specialist at The Athletic, Scott Wheelr, was recently asked some questions about the Montreal Canadiens and who they could target, and he said that the best player they could get with the Winnipeg pick is Michael Hage, a 6'1", silky, puck-handling center with a great shot. We have to get into him, plus Scott Wheelr's comments on Kaiden Lindstrom versus Sennecke, which shed some very interesting light on the Habs position. All of that coming up on this episode of Habs Digest. But Jesse, we got something else to get into a bit first here. And I want to talk about something that happened in the NHL today and doesn't directly involve the Habs, but it certainly involves some of the trade talks we've been hearing about, and that is with Carolina. Now, we've been talking a lot about a Marty Necas trade or whatever between Montreal and Carolina, and one of the big roadblocks in that is, well, there's no way Don Waddell and, his team there are going to trade with Montreal again after the fiasco that happened. But recent happenings, Jesse. President and General Manager Don Waddell has stepped down, and people are speculating he might be heading to Columbus. We'll see. But for now, Eric Tulsky, who's been around for the last 10 years and assistant GM for the last 3, is going to step up. Just to open this video, Don Waddell has been a very interesting guy. We're going to put Michael Hage away. That's all right. Sorry about that. Don Waddell's an interesting guy. With him gone, do you see there being a higher chance for Montreal to maybe pull off a trade with Carolina? This is speculation, right? This is just us talking, but usually when you change GMs and you change your management, even if it is just Don Waddell maybe wanting to look for a new job, that can indicate some big changes coming for the organization. Am I looking too much into this, or does this maybe mean some changes could be coming to their roster?
No, as the Martiniquez rumors are heating up, a big domino that was potentially kind of in the way, the fallout of the Sebastian Aho offer sheet scandal, right? So one of these last impediments to making this potential deal of getting an established young scoring player that Hughes is really looking for has really been eliminated, right? So these rumors were hot to begin with, and they got turned up a level, and it's what's amazing also about, this move is, here at Habs Digest, we're all about the analytics. So nice to see somebody Tulsky from the analytics world really getting a shot at GM. Looks like he's going to do great in this role, right? But you have to feel, right? Like the chances were kind of getting there already, but it now looks even better with this recent move.
Yeah, and Tulsky, you ask some Hurricanes fans, I've seen a lot of them describe him as sort of the brains of the operation. It's a very interesting thing, Jesse, when you extend your head coach, Rod Brindamore, but then your kind of general manager and president steps down. I'm not sure what direction Carolina is going to go, because they have a lot of players that are still under big contracts, and they're a good enough team to at least compete for the playoffs, like at the very least, right? They're spending to the cap basically every year. Their owner's allowing them to spend money to get there, but there's some guys they got to bring back. So an analytics guy, pure speculation, this is just us talking, but an analytics guy who's looking at this, who's saying, like, do we really want to lock up this much money in these players? I think they have to cut their losses somewhere, and I think if someone's going to do it, it's Tulsky. Now, this is me, who knows nothing really detailed about Tulsky. Maybe there's some Hurricanes fans in the comments, or people who have some better insight on the situation. We'd love to hear from you, but I just get this feeling, Jesse, it's nothing more than a feeling, but this feeling that Carolina is going to either trade Necas or let some of their UFAs go, whether it's Teravainen or Gensel. Something big is going to happen with this organization, and I feel like in the right situation, Montreal could capitalize.
Well, it seems like Martiniquez was the odd man out with Don Waddell as the GM. Now, I'm hoping potentially that this hasn't changed, right? Now, with somebody else having the reins, maybe it is possible that Necas does value, that Tulsky does value Necas a little bit more, right? Like, in my opinion, definitely a young player. He's one of your best players in the playoffs. I mean, that has to kind of shift your opinion. That playoff performance has to be worth something, right? But he might be of the same mind as Waddell, right? It's looking more to signing a Teravainen and the likes of Seth Jarvis kind of ahead, right? Obviously, they got a wealth of really great players. They've been competitive for a long time, but they're also kind of at a crux where they haven't been really able to get over that hump, that second round of the playoffs kind of bubble, right? So is moving Necas to kind of complement your team in other ways the move? We'll have to see going forward.
Well, there was that rumor floating around, I think from a couple days ago, and today also on 32 Thoughts, that Necas and Linus Ullmark were discussed in a swap there, which would have made some sense, getting rid of a Vezina caliber goalie, but you get a young guy in return. Anyway, it's a lot of speculation, but we'd love to hear your thoughts. Does this maybe have an impact on what Carolina is going to do moving forward? Is this a big change coming? We don't know, but we like to stay optimistic that Montreal could maybe get some in this whole Carolina situation. But we're going to move on, Jesse, to some cool Scott Wheelr stuff. Now, the draft is coming up, and there's very few names in the industry, especially at The Athletic, that people look at more than Scott Wheelr. Of course, you have like the Corey Promens, you have the Bob McKenzies, and there's a lot of other draft people out there, but Scott Wheeler's name is always around there. He puts in hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of hours of work into this stuff. So I'm going to link some of his articles down below, and also the post where he was answering some questions, but he was answering some questions on Reddit today, Jesse, some specific Habs questions. And I wanted to open up first with some stuff he had to say about Beckett, Sennecke, and Cayden Lindstrom, because of course those are very hot topics right now. So we're gonna pop up the first thing he said. And when he was talking about Beckett Sennecke, he said that Demidov, Sennecke, and Connolly have the best pure puck skills in the draft. Senneca's firmly a top 15 consideration for me now. I'm not quite there on top 10, but I can see the appeal. Tons of offensive upside. And then when discussing Lindstrom versus Sennecke, he says, well, the health argument for taking Sennecke over Lindstrom would be an acceptable one if you're not comfortable with what you learn about Lindstrom's back, which certainly is a concern for some people. But he said, as players, in terms of upside, no, you got to take the big, strong, fast, skilled center in Lindstrom. So this is very interesting, Jesse, and it gives us a sort of a bit of an insight into how teams are maybe evaluating these two players. Now, he's not that high on Sennecke. I think most scouts aren't, but there are teams that we've seen that have Sennecke in the top 5. Do those Lindstrom injury issues concern you at all? And after reading kind of what he had to say, I think it reinforces us who believe Lindstrom is definitely the better player. But those concerns, to hear that even he's concerned, a lot of teams are like, we're going to test him at the combine. I'm starting to get, maybe I'm starting to get cold feet. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking. What about you?
Well, the good news is that Cayden Lindstrom won't require surgery, which is huge in just his overall draft sort of projections, right? But what is really interesting to note with Cayden Lindstrom is that he is not, the rumor is right now that he's not going to be able to be part of the testing at the combines, right? So you feel like that has to hurt a little bit. We know he's a big, strong guy, but those testing, those results matter a lot, right? So you have to feel like, is this what maybe allows Cayden Lindstrom to fall to us at a 5, where otherwise, if he was at the combines, blowing everybody away with those results, where maybe it's not the case, because we're seeing a lot of mocks now where Demidov and Lindstrom are gone before we're selecting at 5th, which is kind of like a worst case scenario in a lot of ways for Habs fans, right? So this might just be a blessing in disguise for me with Lindstrom. I would still pick him, and I feel that just because he's not going to be able to do some of those tests might just be our saving grace in getting him at 5.
Yeah, and I mean, psychology is going to play a big role, and of course, Lindstrom's camp, as they should, are saying that, hey, he's going to make a full recovery, he'll be fine. And I feel bad going out and saying, oh, well, look, but he has back problems. I know people with back problems. They never really go away. Like, you never know. Everyone's case is different. And, of course, Lindstrom has access to the best medicine, best doctors, probably in the sports industry, or at least some of them, right? So you got to think that he's probably going to be okay. But at the same time, especially with your back, you never know. One little tweak can change a lot. Just before we move into Michael Hage, which I want to get into, Beckett Sennecke, Jesse, there's been so much praise. And even in this thread, when asked about what kind of role you see Beckett Sennecke playing, Scott Wheelr said, hey, like, now, this is not a perfect comparison, but someone like a Marty Necas actually came up when he was talking about a role that Sennecke could play. Of course, Sennecke with an incredible puck skills, very high offensive upside. He's still wiry. He can fill out with a bunch of muscle. He even threw out the name Kyle Connor. Now, I don't think Sennecke is going to have that kind of goal scoring, but it is interesting to see the comparables for Beckett Sennecke. And I know, as Scott himself says in one of his draft guides, comparables is one of those words that is extremely tough to define if you don't actually give, specific reasons why. But at the same time, it is getting my hopes up maybe a bit for Sennecke. And it's one of the first times in a while, Jess, where I'm just kind of like, honestly, they could pick any one of like 10 players and I'd be pretty thrilled with it.
And it's all about, we're noticing a common theme here. It's always the size and the skill, right? With Beckett Sennecke, that's kind of one of the main things. And even with the player we're going to get into a moment, Michael Hage, a lot of the same things, right? Cayden Lindstrom, that's a big part of the appeal. Demidov is just obviously the pure skill, but I love that the Montreal Canadiens know exactly what they need and they're targeting it just like a surgeon in this draft.
100%. It's going to be exciting. But yeah, you mentioned someone that we got to get into, and that is Michael Hage. Now, Scott Wheelr was asked, I'm going to bring this up as well. He was asked, who's the best player that Montreal could possibly get with that Winnipeg pick? And straight up answer, no BS here. He just straight up says, Michael Hage, in my opinion. And he actually threw Michael Hage's name around as one of the most underrated prospects in this draft in another segment as well. And Jesse, if we go here and I bring up Michael Hage's stats, whoops, sorry, I'm going to bring you up there. There we go. There you are. It was just solo. So Michael Hage, he had 75 points in 54 games this year in the USHL, 33 goals, 42 assists. He had something like 51 points in his last 30 games as well. He has been absolutely phenomenal. And I'm going to bring back and I'm going to play that highlight reel again. When we're talking about a guy like Michael Hage with this crazy edge work, amazing puck handling skills, good eye for passing as well, a very heavy shot, his downsides are kind of just, that acceleration, that like big extra gear that I'm sure he'll learn a bit at the University of Michigan next year. But the more I watch him, Jesse, the more I kind of like this guy. Again, 6'1" center, got some nice size. He is a center. He's a right shot. He has goal scoring pedigree. He has good hands, and his defense isn't that bad. He just has lapses at times. This is maybe my new favorite sleeper pick, not just because I want to copy Scott Wheelr, but after doing some research myself, I'm starting to see like this guy makes a lot of sense for what Montreal is trying to build, and I think you might have some of the same opinions.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're doing very well by kind of looking at getting more center depth. It's really something you can't get enough of. What I really like from this game, obviously the production is there, but like his ability once he gets in the offensive zone to really read the play. Now he has great hands. Obviously great shot which we see from a lot of toss prospects. But I just saw that highlight package. Like Scott Wheelr in the offensive zone there, like setting up plays for other players there. Like as we see, like what a dipsy doodle, like the change of speed to then turn around, find his player right in the slot there for just an easy tap home finish, right? So what I like is that even though he doesn't have that top end speed, like I still look at this player as being pretty quick, right? And then you have the size again, and you can't help but kind of thinking of Slaf, of a bigger guy that can really skate and how beneficial that is. I think he would be an amazing selection at 26 overall, where a Winnipeg pick is. Of course, Bob McKenzie has him at number 23, but we'd almost be lucky to get him at 26 at this point because we're seeing his amazing production, that 75 points, 54 games. That's after having like a really slow start to the season. So you have to feel out the next projection. He's going to rise up even more. So, I mean, maybe we shouldn't be talking about this so loud, Josh, because he would be an absolute steal at 26.
Well, hey, we saw a trade today, one of the weirdest trades I've ever seen. It was Chicago and the Islanders. It was like 20th. It was like basically the 20th pick and a second round pick for the 18th pick and 2 second round picks. So basically you pay an extra second round pick to move up 2 spots. I'm just saying, if Montreal's scared of Michael Hage moving, the price to move up is not that much compared to a Montreal team that has a bunch of seconds and thirds in the next few years. So we could see some more moves just like that if the Habs really wanted to get a guy like this. But let us know your thoughts about Michael Hage, any other sleeper picks that you might want in the draft down below, because that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for all the support you guys have been showing. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.